Well, what inspiring remarks from Tom Wilson on the importance of trust. Before we dive in, I have to say, it's because of him and his leadership that we can take some big swings and bring some new exciting programs to the U.S. Chamber Foundation. So just want to thank Tom for all of his support and trust in us and our team. So speaking of trust, I think that's going to be a common theme throughout the conference today. Trust in how we live, how we lead, how we do business, and certainly part of the message of our conversation today. So if you joined us at Business Solves last year, you might remember that we started a conversation about how business can have a role in strengthening our democracy through civics. And we're here to continue that conversation a bit today with two inspiring leaders who live that mission every day in their personal and professional lives. So I'm pleased to introduce Ojala Naeem, who's the Senior Director of Design Operations at Travelers and also a member of her local town council. And we have Whitney Harmel, who's the Executive Vice President at the Maryland Chamber of Commerce and the Executive Director of the Maryland Chamber Foundation. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd love to start off by each of you sharing your personal stories. What inspired you and led you into civic life, and how have your employers sort of embraced that? So Ojala, I'll ask you to start us off.
Sure. So my personal journey actually started back when I was in middle school, and I was seeing a bunch of problems in my community and said, I want to figure out how to solve these. And those were with things happening in school. And at the time, I didn't think that meant civic engagement. I didn't think that that meant anything beyond just fixing what was wrong. And then we'll fast forward to during the pandemic. So my background prior to joining Travelers, I was working with a lot of small businesses in the Hartford area. And as many of you know, small businesses took a real impact during the pandemic. And there were a lot of problems stemming from that I really wanted to roll up my sleeves and solve. And so in 2021, I moved to my now hometown, Windsor, Connecticut, and said, okay, how can I help? I got involved in our local economic development commission, spent a couple of years there trying to figure out how do we get businesses back online, how do we bring more companies into our town and really invest in our economic development. And then a couple of years later, there was an opening to run for town council. I said, why not? Let's solve more problems. And today I serve as a town councilor in Windsor, Connecticut. And what's been really great throughout this process has been how Travelers has supported it. So some of you, if you were here last year, you may remember that Travelers has a program called Citizen Travelers. And it's really geared towards empowering their employees to become more civically educated and more civically engaged. And for me, that meant a lot because I was worried if I could actually run for office and still maintain my job as a design operations professional, and I didn't want to give up either of those things. And because they invested in their individuals, they created the space to say, hey, if you're passionate about something, if you want to get more involved, you should go do it and we will support you, made a huge difference for me. So I know we'll talk a little bit more about the program later, but it's really core to me feeling like I'm empowered and have the support to be able to help solve problems in my community.
Awesome. Whitney.
Yeah, so thanks first of all for having me today. My story actually starts in childhood. I'm the daughter of two small business owners, and so we didn't have time, quite frankly, for civic engagement. My brother and I were playing in boxes in the back of the store every weekend for my entire childhood. So we were not very active. My parents were working in the business seven days out of the week. And quite frankly, through a really tough stretch in my 20s, my parents passed away. And unfortunately, I had a marriage that ended. And I found myself completely lost at the age of 30, and I spent several years trying to figure out what that next step in my life was. And I happened to meet a wonderful person in Baltimore, where I'm from, who said, hey, come join me at this event that my organization is sponsoring. It's for the United Way of Central Maryland, and it's for young professionals, and maybe you'll meet some people that can help you along your journey. And man, you guys, I walked into a room of 300 young professionals that cared about their community, and I had never in my life felt that kind of positive energy. And I felt like I was in a room with people who understood what our community needed, and were willing to come together to make some change. And so I had never been involved civically, but I jumped right in. I did everything from volunteering with the homeless to feeding the homeless, a whole number of things. And it just so happens that the person that ran that program knew my CEO. And I happened to get an interview a couple years later. And 8 years I've been at the Chamber. And so there's a lot of woven thread, I would say. But my CEO currently is someone who absolutely wants us to activate in civics. We are encouraged to be involved in boards. We're encouraged to be involved in nonprofits. As a team, we're only 10 people, but we tend to support each other when we have some sort of nonprofit event coming up. And so it's working friendships, it's working professional connections, and we just have a really trusting CEO who lets us be ourselves when it comes to civic engagement.
It's really powerful. Thank you for sharing, both of you. It strikes me that, when we give our time, we're not just helping those that we are contributing to, but we get so much value and power out of that ourselves. And I love both of those stories. So thanks for being vulnerable enough to share them. At the Chamber Foundation, we talk a lot about how civic skills are also workplace skills. When we think about things like problem solving, leadership, collaboration, what are some civic skills that you've gained through your civic engagement, and how do those show up in your work life?
Patience. No, but seriously, patience, because what I do from a policy-making perspective and as an elected official focuses around coalition building, around collaboration, around listening to our constituents, understanding what the problems are, and figuring out a way to a resolution that is beneficial for all, but can be agreeable as much as possible by all. And that does require patience, because it doesn't happen in a snap of a finger. It doesn't happen overnight, and it takes time. But it's taught me how important it is to make sure that the people that you are working with, the stakeholders that are involved, may it be other electeds or may it be the people that you are serving, are walking with you each step of the way. That you're not just going out making decisions and saying, all right, you figure out why that's beneficial to you. And when I look at it from a work perspective, all of those things are so critical for my role. So just recently, I've been working on a pretty big project that involves working with leaders from across all of our different business units. Travelers is a 30,000 people company, pretty big, lots of different pieces to move forward. And I remember when I first started Travelers, I was like, man, how does anyone get anything done? Like, I got to engage so many different people. And I've learned over time that that is how you get things done. You build those relationships, you understand, you listen to what is of interest to each of those stakeholders, what they want to see happening, and you figure out a way to bring the best possible solution forward that will make as many people as possible happy with the results that are coming out. So all the things that I'm doing, all the skills that I'm developing and learning from a life in public office are playing in directly to the work I do at Travelers.
So a lot of wisdom in that response. Whitney?
I think for me, there's two different, there's a tangible and there's the intangible. And the intangible is just my growth and empathy for others. I feel like I'm a fairly empathetic person, but when you are volunteering in the way that I have volunteered and how I've come up through different organizations in Maryland, I would say empathy is probably at the top of the list, and really trying to understand and meet someone where they are versus where I think they should be. And that has absolutely come over into my professional life as well. And then the second is public speaking. I shared with you that I walked into a room that night with 300 people, but the part of the story that I didn't tell is that I literally stood up against the wall because I was completely paralyzed in fear. I had, as I mentioned, come out of a pretty tough decade, and I did not think anyone in that room wanted to acknowledge me or speak to me, and I stood against the wall, and nobody came and pulled me off the wall. And I will never forget what that felt like, and I forced myself off the wall, And as I mentioned, I joined this emerging leaders group, and I jumped right in. And before I knew it, I was on the council, and I was working my way up in the leadership of the council. Well, guess what? We had an annual conference, and before I knew it, I was being asked to present. Well, I didn't think I deserved to be presenting, but they thought I deserved to be presenting, and so I practiced on my peers year after year. And then eventually I was asked to be on the board at the United Way of Central Maryland. And if you met me today, you would not think that 10 years ago I was a wallflower that was holding up a wall in a room with 300 people, or that I would be speaking here today. But it is now a big part of my job every day to be speaking to businesses, to be speaking publicly in situations like this, to be representing my organization. And had I not walked in the room that night, and had I not jumped all in on this organization, there's no way that I would be sitting here today, or that I would have the opportunities that I've had.
Wow, I think that is such a good lesson for all of us. And I think many of us are still standing against the wall, and we need to have the courage to really dive in, right? And figure out, how do we engage locally? How do we get involved in our communities with our teams and our workplaces? Those are just such applicable skills and lessons for both. So Whitney, Ojala, both of your organizations have really supported and participated internally and externally, civic education and engagement programs. Why is that so important right now? And how does that help build trust and prosperity, both in our communities and in our workplaces?
Yeah, so I think it's pretty obvious, the polarization that a lot of us are feeling and experiencing, whether it's at work or personally or just watching the news. And the Maryland Chamber Foundation was asked 4 years ago, I think at this point, to be one of the piloting programs for the National Civic SPE, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's a program for middle school students to directly address a community problem that they see, that they're passionate about. And we jumped all in. And we thought, what a great way to interact with young minds. And I think, just full disclosure, I am a childless by choice person, so I do not have kids in my home, but it is evident that kids have information that is accessible at any moment in the palm of their hand. And I grew up in an era where it was Desert Storm, and if my parents didn't have it on the nightly news, then we didn't know as middle school students what was happening. The biggest challenge we had was, is our friend going to answer the door when we knocked on it, or am I going to have to ride my bike home? So I think now that kids have access to information, and they're so much more knowledgeable about what's happening in our society, they want to be a part of the solution. They want their voice to be heard. And what a better way than to engage them at such a young age. And what we found, and what was so surprising to me over the last 4 years, has been how their families have engaged. So it becomes a family unit, and how parents have embraced the idea that this young mind in their home wants to be more involved, and that they're supporting that, and they're opening up doors. And so it's something that we've just been really proud of. And it actually has activated our team to be more civically engaged. I think we were individually, but as a team, we've been more civically engaged.
I appreciate the kind of focus around the National Civic SPE, because the education piece is still so lacking, right? One of the things that Citizen Travelers does, they don't just encourage you to run for office, they also do a lot of educating of our employees on what is civic engagement, and understanding civics, and understanding where you can vote, and what you can vote on, and how you can get involved and make a difference. And those are things, I still learn things. I'm in elected office, and I'm still learning things from some of the programs that they're putting on. And I think we're lacking that education, so I think it's so critical to have these types of programming, supporting getting folks more engaged. The other piece, I think right now we're seeing, yes, we have polarization, but we also are seeing individuals feeling disconnected from their communities, as well as the institutions that they're a part of, right? And that disconnection, that disengagement, leads to more problems being created and no one there to solve them. And I think when employers are saying, hey, we want to create the space for you to get more involved because we believe in your ability to invest in your communities. And we believe that it's important for you to put your voice out there. Oh, and by the way, we want to hear what you're seeing and hearing and learn from you and bring it back into, our companies and inside our walls. That's so powerful because it's making individuals not only better employees, but it's helping the communities that they're living in, and it's helping the companies become more, I'll call it, outstanding corporate citizens as well.
Absolutely. And you all saw before we came out here a short video that showed a Civic Day of Action. So I just wanted to explain a little bit what that was. So as part of our Civics at Work initiative, which both the Maryland Chamber of Commerce and Travelers have been part of helping us pilot, we launched a pilot earlier this year called Civics Academy, which is an opportunity for employees in the workplace to do a little bit of a Civics 101. And at the end of completing that course, they had an opportunity to do a Civic Day of Action where they went out into their community and volunteered in some form. And so you saw what the Odessa Chamber did down in Texas, which was phenomenal. And we've been gathering some of those stories. And we are launching that as a national program next year and would love for all of you to be a part of it. And just wanted to thank you both for your participation and support in that as well. So we're coming to the end of our time, but before we wrap up, I wanted to ask, for those who may be in the audience that have that spark, who want to get involved, want to be more civically engaged, or want to find ways for their organizations to become engaged, what's your advice for them? Or what's one small step or action that they could take to get started?
I think you should look at what drives your passions. What are you most interested in? What is it that you really feel strongly about and care for? Like I shared in kind of my intro, small businesses meant a lot to me into the work that I did, and I wanted to see that community come back online and be thriving again. And so I got involved in the Economic Development Commission. You don't have to just run for office. You don't have to just serve on a board or commission. There's so many different ways to volunteer. And also remember that your vote is a way to take action as well, especially at the local levels. I mean, I know we talk about federal level elections all the time. That's what most people are familiar with. But local elections matter. You might be in a place where there's referendums happening all year round. Get involved. Those are decisions that are going to impact you and your families on the long run. So really ask yourselves, what is it that I'm most passionate about? And then find an avenue to be able to really act on that passion. And also talk to your employer, right? Say, hey, how can we get more involved in the community that we're in? How can we make sure that our employees know that they have these opportunities to engage? And for those employers that are in the room, I think, ask your employees. You might be surprised at what many of them are already doing. It's so incredible to me to look at the community that we've grown at Travelers through the Citizen Travelers program. I have so many peers that I didn't even know were involved in their local boards of ed or on different commissions. And so now I've got a whole community of support at work that also helps me think through challenges I'm running into outside of work in public office.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you anymore. I think it's, for any of the young people in the room, lead from the front. Go to the person in the office, go to someone that you trust and float an idea. Come up with a solution, come up with a community challenge, or suggest that the team discusses it together even. What a better way to talk about the community than to do it all in your staff meeting instead of talking about the latest numbers. I would love that, actually. And I think, from the employer standpoint, it's be open to opportunity. I'll just give you an example. A couple years ago, one of our coworkers said, I'd like to really support the food bank. And when you think about the disparities that happen when kids are hungry and what happens in schools, and when you think about families who might be in need, it was something that our whole team could get behind. So we floated it to our board of directors and said, hey, do you guys want to get involved in this? Who wants to be a part of it? Well, they didn't just write checks, which we all love when they write checks, but they said, hey, can we we're going to make it a competition internally. So United Healthcare gets this team and they get very competitive every year, and they're each given a certain dollar amount, and then they let them loose in Sam's Club. And they say, go have fun with this money and come back and make sure you have nutritious food that we can give to the food bank. And then we meet them there, and we give everything, and we make it an opportunity to connect in different ways. And so we've engaged not just our own team, but we've engaged our board as well. And we have a lot of fun with it. And that's the other thing. You can have a lot of fun engaging in civics, right? And I think whether it's an education board or it's volunteering at a food bank or whatever makes sense for your organization, align it with your mission, align it with what your people care about as well. You can't go wrong, but start somewhere, because at the end of the day, especially the younger generation, they want to be active in those ways, and they want to see that the organization is as well, and nothing bad happens when you are focusing on your community.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Maybe next year we can kick off a conference at the local grocery store. Everybody set loose and picks out some non-perishable goods for a local charity.
Yeah, you can make it like an old school game show, when they used
Supermarket
to run the
sweep.
carts around.
Okay, so as we close, what's one final thought or a great lesson that you've learned throughout either your personal or professional journey of civic engagement that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would say lean in. And you said it in your opening remarks today, and it made me smile, because that's what I had thought about today. Just lean into it. And you can individualize it, you can do it as a team. It is literally never too early. So if you have middle school students or you have younger kids, it's never too early to get them involved, and it's never too late for you. You absolutely all have a passion within you to do something, and if you're not sure what that is, go do a couple of things and you'll figure it out. But yes, lean into what civics could be for you.
I'm going to build off of that. Lean in, and remember that civics is an investment into your people and your business, right? We have a lot of business leaders and individuals that are working with other businesses. When you invest in your employees, you're telling them, hey, we believe what you are doing out in your communities is going to make us a better company. It's going to make you a better professional, and we want to support that. I think it is so critical right now, right? Many companies hold some of the top talent, and I'm a firm believer that you don't have to be a politician to be in politics. We need talented individuals that bring strong strengths and skills, and that could be being a great finance professional, because lots of numbers we need to figure out, or it could be someone who's working in human-centered design. That's my background, and it helps me look at problems and approach them from a very human-centric way. So take a look inside of your companies and say, hey, how do we make sure our people are not only helping strengthen our companies, but the communities that they're in?
Absolutely. I think civics is how we can build our future together. It's so integral to our everyday lives, right? It's not just, a subject in school, or, we focus a lot on the numbers of the percent of Americans who fail a basic civics test and things like that, which is important to know where we stand, but it's so much bigger than that, right? It's how we solve problems together. It's how we work together. It's how we strengthen our communities. It's how we build trust, and it can all be done through civics. So thank you both for being part of this conversation. Wanted to give an opportunity, if folks wanted to learn more about what travelers in the Maryland Chamber are doing around civics, how could they find out more information?
For travelers, you can visit travelers.com. We have a whole section called Citizen Travelers on our website. We have a great playbook that the company has actually created to encourage other companies to also think about how they can activate civic engagement within their walls. So please do check that out, and I'm here all day and happy to answer any questions later too.
Awesome.
Yeah, and for us, it's mdchamber.org, or you could just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll respond and connect with you, and happy to have an offline conversation about what civics could mean for your organization. So thanks, Hillary.
Excellent. Well, if you want to learn more about the work the foundation is doing, of course, you can find that at uschamberfoundation.org. And later this afternoon, my colleague Pamela Sharma will be leading a civics trivia event right here in this room. So you can all brush up on your own civic knowledge and see the fun, as you mentioned, that we could have together around civics. So thank you all, and thank you to our panel.
Thank you.